Evening all. Self-driving cars, are they racist or not? Well, this was a story that did the rounds during the week, and Vox and The Independent suggested that self-driving cars could be racist. Oh, what a surprise from those two august publications. You see, the AI in a self-driving car might not be able to detect darker-skinned people at night and just run them over. On the other hand, other publications suggested that self-driving cars could solve racism. Anyway, in the last couple of days, some tech journals debunked the whole story and said, this is nonsense. This isn't going to be a flaw with the AI. But, our favourite left-leaning news organisations, they just run with the stories that are presented them hot off the desk. They haven't got time to research. They haven't got time to delve into what is truth and what is fiction. You should know that by now. So my issue isn't with whether self-driving cars are racist or not, but the media's ongoing obsession with self-driving cars, particularly the BBC. Now, I've listened to a lot of the Today programme and PM on Radio 4 for my sins, and hardly a week goes by without self-driving cars and a story related about them sort of crop up. And it got me thinking, why should this be so? Why should so many media outlets be fixated on self-driving cars? And I thought about the nature of man and vehicle itself. You see, learning how to drive is a rite of passage. As a mark, when you pass your test, you are licensed to operate this speed machine, and it's a self-contained world, so it's a rite of passage. You can get out there on the road, and you can be in your own self-contained world with your choice music on the car stereo. You go wherever you want. The highway is yours, and I think that's part of the problem, particularly with the progressive left. This idea of the individual inside their own personal vehicle, it just rankles with the Fabians, and I think this is why they keep coming back to self-driving cars. There's various quality of drivers. There's people like myself. I'm a very good driver, and then there's BMW drivers, and we all have to share the roads. The driving skill is variable, and that can lead to accidents and crashes, and people can be harmed. I mean, genuinely harmed from it. So what if we had these lovely programmed self-driving cars that could take all the variable skill levels away from the individual and just have it all computer controlled, and we know where everybody's going, and we know how everybody should be driving because computer says so. And I think this is what is driving this kind of obsession with self-driving cars. I think the progressive left media are kind of having wet dreams about the idea. Next, A Tale of Two Pariahs. Now, on the one hand is Count Dankula. Last year I did a video called Je suis Dankula, where I stood up for his right of freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and his right to offend. I also cited some examples of how whenever the state and the authorities have tried to censor either artwork, publications, humour in the past, it has never gone well. History has tended to judge censorious governments badly and harshly, and rightly so. But at the time, I said, although I was standing up for Dankula's rights, I didn't find his sense of humour particularly to my tastes. I'd like to recant that and say I am now a fan of Count Dankula's sense of humour. I've been following him on Twitter, I've been watching him on YouTube, and I saw his stand-up routine at the Comedy Unleashed Club, and I found it hilarious. And I find his sense of humour now does chime with me. Yeah, or maybe I've altered, but I've seen a lot more of his work, and I'm impressed at how droll he is, and how on the mark he is with his humour. But what I'm particularly impressed with is the way that he's handled this kind of notoriety that he didn't particularly ask for. which is mostly false. These accusations that he's a Nazi or he's alt-right or he's some kind of Nazi fascist sympathizer, it's completely false. If you look at his body of work as a whole, you will know that he is none of the things that he is frequently accused of by people in the mainstream media, by the Scottish authorities, and by the progressive left. But I am impressed with the way he has borne it. And he has lost work because of this false accusation. He has, as I said, become a pariah in many circles. And when he's trying to put his life back on track and to try and let everybody know that who is the real Mark Meacham, aka Count Dankula, he is prevented from doing so by the progressive left in cahoots with the mainstream media. So late last week came the story that he had been invited to be a guest on 2 episodes of a new BBC topical comedy show to be produced by BBC Scotland. And there were protests, and I say protests, but it was probably singular. And they complained, and so they edited him out of 2 episodes. And then that wasn't enough, then the 2 episodes were dropped, and then that wasn't enough, and the whole series has been cancelled. And we don't even know what he said. Only the people that were present on the production know what he said. So how can we make any judgment about whether he is acceptable or unacceptable? As I said, I've seen his live stand-up comedy act at the Comedy Unleashed Club. It's up on YouTube. Do check it out. And it's really funny, and it would not look out of place on any mainstream media format. But yet, he must be a Nazi, and he must be cast out. But I can only imagine what that must do to somebody's mental health, if you are constantly being lied about, and those lies will in turn mean that you can't get work, that you cannot get a fair hearing from the court of public opinion because of this. Now, when I was a child, I had an experience at school where one boy at school accused me of being a thief and going around stealing things from people's bags, which was completely untrue. It was probably him who did it, and then he pointed to me and said, thief. And I remember it's a very traumatic experience, actually, but I was 10 at the time, and I had 40 pupils. I think it's 40 pupils. I can remember because it was like 2 complete classrooms just advancing down at me in a school corridor, chanting, thief, 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 thief. Imagine 40 voices, and they're backing me up into a wall going, thief, thief, thief. And there's a staff room down there, and not one teacher emerges from the staff room. Okay? Now, that is just a microcosm of what Dankula must be going through. Okay? I mean, how he has borne up mentally is impressive. But let's have a look at my other pariah figure from this week, and that's Tommy Robinson. Now, in Robinson's case, he has also been tarred and become a pariah figure to the progressive left and to the mainstream media. And I think the case against Tommy Robinson isn't cut and dried, but then the case for Tommy Robinson isn't cut and dried either. I've mentioned this a number of times on my shows. When it comes to Tommy Robinson, he is right and wrong, often at the same time, about the same thing. And I have to look at his work very well, as objectively as I can, because I do see that there are times when he's just absolutely on the money about an issue, and there's other times I think, why have you done that? And I'm thinking in particular about his breaking court reporting restrictions, the incident that led to him being jailed most recently. And you think, well, why would you do that? Why would you walk close to that line and risk it, knowing that they're looking for any potential mistake? But this week, what was interesting was that he had had enough of kind of slurs being thrown at him and accusations being thrown at him from the left-wing activist Mike Stutchbury. a man whose own copybook is not clean either. There was a strange video of Tommy Robinson at 5 o'clock in the morning going to Mike Stutsbury's house and pounding on the door, demanding answers. And on the one hand, I could see in Tommy Robinson's face and hear in his voice that there is some kind of torment going on in him. He momentarily lost reason, it appears, over this, and is banging on Stutsbury's door. Now, this is ammunition for his opponents. But I come back to the point of, what does this kind of pressure, what does it, when you become a pariah figure in public, and particularly in Robinson's case, a bogeyman to many people, what that must do to your faculties. And I just think, with the amount of stuff that Robinson gets, some of it brought on by himself, that I worry that he is perhaps losing his grip on rationality at times. This is what's causing him to do these things. He has always been a visceral character. And I think that with an incident like that, you also get the Tommy Robinson that spoke at the Oxford Union, which is, I think, is his best moment, where he was able to articulate very clearly and very well the problems that he has been seeing in Britain in recent years. And so we shall see, but it's interesting to see how men who have been pilloried deal mentally with the accusations that are thrown at them. So let's talk now a little bit about the current state of the Conservative Party. To say that a number of prominent Conservative members of Parliament have tacked to the left is an understatement. The latest one being Nick Bowles, who expressed on Twitter his admiration for Jess Phillips, saying that she would make a wonderful Prime Minister. He couldn't gush enough about her. Now, where that leaves us at the moment is with the Conservative Party, with lots of its members of Parliament either outing themselves as Blairites, or else seemingly abducted by some progressive cult and brainwashed. And now we have a gaping chasm in British politics where the mainstream right used to be. We also have a gaping chasm in British politics where the centre used to be. I would argue that there hasn't been a proper centre party in the United Kingdom for over 30 years. So your only choices now, when it comes to a vote, you can either vote for a hard left Marxist party, or you can vote for a progressive left-wing party. You don't have a mainstream right party at the moment. Various scenarios. What can be done about this? Well, Peter Hitchens has called for the destruction of the Conservative Party, but he hasn't said what should replace it. Unfortunately, that's what I find typical with Hitchens. Very good at diagnosing the problem, but when you push him on solutions, he gets a bit vague on certain issues, particularly what becomes of the mainstream right. You might argue that UKIP is the solution to the Conservative Party, but I don't think UKIP is a proper mainstream right-wing party yet. I reject the notion that it's a far-right extremist party. But I do recognise that in the last few elections, UKIP has been tapping the votes of traditional Labour heartlands, the old trade union country. The appeal of leaving the European Union, retaining sovereignty, and having a government that's more accountable to voters in the UK is appealing. It appeals to people on the mainstream right, and it appeals to people in the old Labour heartlands. But if you're going to go wider than that, okay, what's the economic policy? What's the social policy? What's the defence policy? UKIP, I don't think, are there as a mainstream right-wing party, so we'll still have a gap. And also, UKIP have got a mountain to climb. They're not where they were in 2009. They've gone down, 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 and they've got to rebuild themselves up. Not easy, considering that they have split into two factions, the Faragists and the Battenites. So we shall see. But we need a mainstream right, and I would argue also a mainstream centre, because we don't have that at the moment. What's the solution? Total destruction of the Conservatives? Okay, but what replaces it? Or reform from within? But is that too much to ask? Is it impossible? I don't know. And finally on the biscuit, perhaps my favourite story of the week. It concerns the Canadian fizzy pop Lacroix. Now, profits for Lacroix have plummeted. I mean, they've tanked, essentially. And the CEO, Nick Caparella, decided to release a statement explaining why the product had performed so badly of late. And his reason was because of injustice. I'm going to read out his official statement. I'll just call it up here. We are truly sorry for these results stated above. Negligence, nor mismanagement, nor woeful acts of God were not the reasons. Much of this was a result of injustice. Managing a brand is not so different from caring for someone who becomes handicapped. Would you like to go in your special chair for a little bit? Can I get you a cocoa? Therapist will be around later. Yeah, the physio will be around later, okay? Brands do not see or hear, so profound. So they are at the mercy of their owners or care providers, who must preserve the dignity and special character that the brand exemplifies. It is important that Lacroix's true character is not devalued intentionally, like with a really piss-poor press statement. National Beverage Corp is and will remain the preeminent innovator that adds zest and authenticity to the sparkling water phenomena in North America. Behold, behold the sparkling water phenomena. He goes on. There is no greater passion than the kind that creates the wonderful refreshment and contentment described as unique. No greater passion, eh? Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. But wait, it gets better. No doubt, the sound and personality of the word Lacroix, coupled with the awesome experience of its essence and taste, is unique. One can be induced to purchase by cheapening the price or giving away a product. Well, if you're giving away the product, then they're not purchasing it. But falling in love with a feeling of joy is the result of contentment. Well, actually, you get the sense of contentment from falling in love and the feeling of joy. Just ask any Lacroix consumer. Would you trade away that la-la feeling? By the looks of it, you've traded in something to go la-la. No way, they shout. No way! We just love Lacroix. I am positive they respond this way each and every time, Caparella concluded. Now, do you think the markets responded badly to that press statement? Yes, they did. And so Caparella's days at Lacroix seem numbered, but there'll always be a home for him somewhere in the European Union, perhaps as Guy Verhofstadt's friend with benefits. Anyway, on that note, that really does take the biscuit.